My name is Erik Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9-to-5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets podcast with your host, Erik Van Horn, here with Jennie Wolff of Sola Salon Studios and another brand. She is the CMO. She has grown up in franchising with Sola, which I was a franchisee of early on. So I got to get to know Jennie as she was in the marketing department there. And I've just seen her grow and develop. And now she's doing some amazing things there. I've called her asking for help multiple times as I've been helping Mighty Dog Roofing, my franchise, get started. And as I needed some advice in the marketing space, I wanted to go to somebody, and Jennie was one of my go-to people in that. So Jennie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Erik. It's good to see you live on Zoom.
Live on Zoom, go figure, pandemic time, and we're still on Zoom. Hopefully we will not be on Zoom much longer. I've been actually going to some live events and it's been fun. I'm getting ready to go to Puerto Rico, Miami, and Vegas, and someplace else too. But I'm not totally stuck at home.
Well, that's awesome for you. I'm definitely jealous. Throughout the pandemic, I actually was pregnant and had a baby. So my experience has been a little bit different because I've been trying to protect my little human, going through first time mom stuff during a pandemic has certainly been interesting.
Oh man, I know. And if you were on number 3, we have 3 girls. If you were on number 3, if you were anything like us, you'd be like, anything goes with number 3. But number 1, it's your baby. It's your first baby. And I remember leaving the hospital and just thinking, like, does everybody not know they should be super careful because I'm driving home with a little human in my car? I just wanted to have like those baby on board signs everywhere. Is really a really strange thing.
Oh, I totally understand that. I remember leaving the hospital and I sat in the back next to Lucas, our little guy, and I had my hand on him the whole time just to make sure he was still breathing.
I know. Oh, well, so you are the CMO of Sola, and what other brand?
Yes. So Sola Salon Studios, I've been with the Sola brand since 2013, and it was actually my first foot in the door in franchising. So now I'm coming up on 8 years with Sola. And last summer, in the middle of 2020, we acquired Woodhouse Day Spa. So Sola and Woodhouse Day Spa are now operating under the parent company, Radiance Holdings. So very excited to now be working on the Woodhouse brand as well. And then we also just launched an e-commerce website called Beauty Hive. So the 3 brands now fall under Radiance Holdings.
Jesus, go back to the baby theme. Like, you are growing up. Like, you are not a little baby in franchising like you were when I met you 8 years ago. And like, you were doing some really cool things. I would say, like, you've made it. Like, you're there. So you're not just a kid. Like, you are doing some amazing things. Talk about that journey, because I mean, really, Jennie, you've done a lot from like coming into Sola back then. When we first got into it, it was a founder run franchise. It was not corporate at all, to say the least. It was the opposite of corporate. And it had a very great, I really enjoyed Sola, and I kind of grew up with that brand as well. But it was a different, you walked into it, and I think you were probably the first one ever in the marketing department, because it was, Matt and Stratton were running that thing back then. And so how did you get hired? I think I know how you got hired. So talk about how you got hired, and then talk about like what you did when you first came into that brand.
Yeah, absolutely. My journey is sort of interesting because, when I went to college, I was an English and creative writing major. And I would say my dad didn't really understand why. And whenever I explained it to him, I would say that I was trying to learn how to make the world's best English muffins. He really did not like that joke. And I didn't really know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I, took a lot of education classes. I thought maybe I'll be a teacher. I was interning in the music industry. I really loved the music industry. I came out, moved out to Denver, Colorado right after college. And I got a job at a live music venue. I was trying to get my foot in the door in the music industry. I worked at the venue for about 6 months and then got my first full-time big girl job with Cronky Sports and Entertainment. So I was in the events department. Spent about 5 years running events. And then I went and worked at a marketing agency. And, it was sort of an interesting move because I took a pay cut. I took a sideways step. I didn't really know anything about marketing. And I felt like my time in the agency was sort of like my own makeshift grad school. I just learned an incredible amount. And during the time I was working at the marketing agency, I met a friend of mine, started dating a new guy, and he was actually in the Sola family. So he was our founder, Stratton Smith's nephew, Jeremy Campbell. And Jeremy and I got to talking. Yeah, Jeremy and I got to talking about Sola. And I was actually a customer of a Sola esthetician. And she had owned her own traditional salon, kind of in a real funky part of Denver. And she had 5 hair stations up front, and she did all the skincare in the back. And I used to go there. I always call them my first friends in Denver, which was so funny because when I was working at Pepsi Center, I was basically getting paid in pennies, and I really couldn't afford to get my hair done and my eyebrows done. But the good news is that the girls at the salon really loved Nuggets and Avalanche games. And I had my hands on as many tickets as you could possibly imagine. So we used to do a little bartering. I hope nobody from Cronky's listening to this, because you weren't really supposed to do that with the tickets. But when I got called out on it, I would say, well, I can't afford my hair. So either give me a raise or this is where the tickets are going. So anyway, I saw her journey. She closed her traditional salon and moved to Sola. And I just saw a different side of her. When I went to see her at Sola for the very first time, she was more at ease. She had more control. Even as the owner, she said she didn't have to worry about people no showing, about pipes bursting and the sort of stuff that you go into when you're managing a facility. And I was just really fascinated by her experience. So when I got introduced to the Sola family, I had so many questions about the marketing. I was working at an experiential marketing agency, and everything was about creating an experience and building community around everything down to gluten-free waffles and soda products, right? So I thought, wow, this Sola community must have some real magic. And I asked a lot of questions, and Jeremy really kind of just said, I think you should probably go out to lunch with my uncle. I'm like, well, I'm not really looking for new friends. Is this for a job? So we ended up going out for lunch, and fast forward, the founders, they were sort of unsure on what the brand's need was for marketing. So I did most of the talking. And about 6 weeks later, I got a voicemail with a job offer. That's never happened to me before. And I called Stratton back, and I said, I haven't seen a job description.
I don't think Stratton's ever seen one either.
Right. So like you said, it was just such a different company back then. And so when I started at Sola, it felt like a real leap of faith, but I was just so inspired by the mission and the why. I love hairdressers. I love the beauty industry. I couldn't wait to be part of a brand that was empowering them to own their own businesses. And God, we just kind of hit the ground running with, kind of started out with a rebranding project and took it from there and got to know franchising. Mm-hmm.
So that was how you got introduced to franchising, through a voicemail job offer. But you're in, that's typical Stratton. And they didn't have a big bench of people, a lot of corporate employees, and because the business model is easy, and they kind of grew through friends and family. Like what you said about Matt and Stratton, the vision, the mission behind it, that was always clear. And that was always clear to me. And that's like, he would rather have that than a job description. I mean, that mission was, I mean, I remember him talking to me about it. I mean, he came out and did site selection with me. Stratton did in Orange County the first time, and he would talk about the mission and the vision of the company, and it was just part of who he is. He didn't do it like, hey, here's our mission. It was just part of conversation. So I can see why you were attracted to that. I want to take a step back into the agency, because i I heard some things that it's an experiential agency. Give me some more insight into that agency, and then it goes even a little bit further back into like your creative writing. I think that's what a lot of people, when they think about marketing, they don't understand the psychology behind it, the purpose behind different things, from images to copywriting. So from creative writing to being a really good copywriter, or understanding the value of good copywriters, those are just things that a lot of franchise marketing departments, that they just don't understand that. So I loved it when you said you went from like the events thing into the marketing agency. So what are some of the things that you learned at the marketing agency that were either unique to that agency or different than the run of the mill marketing departments?
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, there's so much that you just hit on there, because I think there are so many different sides to marketing. Events is a side of marketing. There's digital marketing. There's the analytics and the data and the budget side of marketing. There's the writing side of marketing. It's just that you can be an expert in marketing and just be really good at one of those things. I sort of laugh because when I was growing up, my brother was really, really, really a good squash player. My sister was an incredible horseback rider. They were both going places. And my dad used to tell me I was the jack of all trades and the master of none. And so now I realize that actually really lends itself very well to a role as a CMO, because I can sort of know enough to be dangerous in a lot of different areas, and then build my team and hire the experts in every single exact
My gosh,
role.
that's so true, because I understand, I know what good copy looks like. I'm not going to be the one that, if you need copy written, like I'm the go-to copy person. I know
Mm-hmm.
what good video, I know what good images, I know a lot of that, I know, so I can totally relate to that. And I think it's, as a CMO, you need to understand some of those things, that, and then even with digital, there's certain things with digital, the way that it works, and it's always evolving. If you just think about digital as another, just another thing, and you don't really understand Google and Facebook, the algorithms, how things are changing, you don't need to understand how it all works, but you need to have an understanding of it, because that's the environment that we live in today. And I see so many people in franchising that are just not aware of those types of things. They're not in the know. They're not knowledgeable about the current things in marketing today. They might be able to put together a really good flyer, but they don't know anything beyond that. So I love that you said that. So you are the jack of all trades, master of none, but that served you well. What are you like really good at within marketing, or are you really just good at like pretty good at everything?
Well, like I think that when I came to Sola, one thing that I really am very proud of throughout the last 8 years is just really developing the magic around the brand. Bringing people together, and we created live events. We created apps that they could use to run their business and better connect with the industry, and bringing people together and really feeling this pride for the brand. I would say, I'm formally trained in creative writing and I love to write. So that would definitely be high on my list. But to answer your question from before about the agency, I remember I probably had 6 rounds of interviews at the agency. And, I remember the owner of the agency sat down in front of me and he said, so you basically can create an event of any shape or size if it falls inside the walls of the Pepsi Center. And I said, yes. And And he said, I don't need that. I said, okay, look, here's the deal. This is my 6th interview. And if I don't get a job offer today, you will not hear from me again. So he left the room and he came back about 5 minutes later and he gave me a job offer. So then, I started at the agency.
Did he
and
tell
they
you
put
why
me,
though? Like that's interesting. Did he tell you why he gave it to you? Did you have that type of relationship to understand like later
he
on?
just yeah he actually said, I don't really need that, but for some reason I like you. I'll be right back. you know so anyway, he leaves the room, he comes back, and there was an events team within the agency, and it was an experiential agency, but we also did everything. I mean, graphic design, website, apps, huge ideas, more traditional brand ambassador sampling in grocery stores, programs like
Mhm.
that. I threw a big party for Cartoon Network. There was a lot of really fun stuff that I got to do. But I remember when I first started at the agency, I didn't really know how to do a whole lot of anything, and I was learning. So I went in one day to the owner and I said, I want to do a website project. And he said, do you know how to build a website? I said, no. And he goes, all right, well, if you, and there was a very a local, well, I shouldn't call local, but it's in the Front Range in the mountains, called Piney River Ranch. And I'm like, that's kind of a perfect place to dip my toe in the water, right? I'm not building a website for Mountain Dew. Like, let me take this one. And so he said, if you can get me a technology document by the end of the day, you can do the website project. So I'm like, well, what's a technology document? And he walked away. So I was like, okay.
Google.
Google's my best friend. So I Googled everything. I went around and asked everybody in the agency. Everyone's like, I'm way too busy to help you with this project. So I dug through all the files on the, company, wherever we were storing our documents 10 years ago. I don't know, what
Yeah.
it was then. And I found some sample technology documents. I put one together for Piney River Ranch, and I brought it to him, and he goes, and they called me JWoww at the agency. He's like, wow, JWoww, this looks pretty good. I'm like, cool. I have no idea what any of it means. And he let me run that website project. And actually, the developer that I worked with on that website project is the developer that I then hired to rebuild the Sola website.
No way.
So, I just kind of started figuring things out. And I tell our community of hairdressers and beauty professionals this all the time. And, it really is great for franchises as well. That you don't have to be the expert in everything. You need to know how to learn something new every day and hire an expert where you need to. And I remember when I took the job at Sola, the parting words from the agency were, you have a lot to learn. And I just politely removed the profanity that was part of that sentence. And I left feeling scared, but because I felt like it was almost a threat. I don't know, but I took that and I turned it into a challenge. And I just said, I hope that I learn something new every day for the rest of my life. So here I am. Google is my best friend. I've learned a lot. I've done so many things at Sola that I'd never done before. And, like you said, when you need to know when to hire an expert, even if I had been an expert in digital marketing, by the time Sola had a budget big enough to be dangerous in the digital space, everything would have changed.
Yep.
So at that point, I had to, bring in, whether it's outside resources or building up my team, know when to ask for help.
It's so true. It's hiring. We all think, let me rephrase that. It's so easy to think we need to be the expert at a lot of different things. And especially if you're leading a certain department or the CEO or whatever that C-level that position is, or director level position, so easy to to think like, I need to be the copywriter. I need to be, the whatever it is. And you need to be the one that understands the stuff and hires for it. And I've always been comfortable hiring smarter people than me. Like that's never been an issue for me. I don't I'm sure other people may disagree, but I don't really have an ego. And I think part of it's I live in South Dakota, and it's not, who cares if I'm a businessman here? What it just doesn't, nobody cares. So I didn't grow up like, having to impress people, and I still don't because I live here. So I don't really have an ego. So, and I'm a C student, and that's, I talk about that from time to time. So I was always around smarter people than me. And I think that's one of my superpowers is being comfortable being around smarter people, hiring smarter people than me. I think the saying goes, like C students hire A students to do the work for them. I love people that are experts in their thing and hiring them. And as we're doing this with Mighty Dog Roofing, we're going out and I'm hiring vendors and hiring, different people to do the stuff that needs to be done. I can't be a website builder, right? But you need to know how to relate to them and how to communicate with them, and to be able to, for them to be able to get their stuff done. And that stuff that you and I have talked about. So the question is, how do you go about finding vendors to work with? So any franchisor out there that is wanting to hire for some of the things that they have needs for in their franchise, how do you work with vendors in marketing?
Well, that's a great question. I will say, most of the people that I've worked with, I've met throughout my career in one way or another, or I've gotten referrals. I try to connect with other friends of mine who work in marketing, and if I need a photographer, there'll be my first people that I reach out to, or if I need a graphic designer, I'll reach out to them. I've been really grateful to work with some really awesome people who specialize in things like web development and graphic design that I met through my time at the agency. And, since then I've worked with lots and lots of different people. There's also, agencies that will set you up with people. If you're ever having trouble or you're in a pinch and you need somebody tomorrow, for instance, we had this just recently, we had a big jam in our design queue and we needed an extra resource and we just did not have time to waste. And so there's a group, it's called the Creative Group. And they've helped me place most of the people on my team actually. So I'm so grateful to them. But I, reached out and said, I need a graphic designer like yesterday. And literally within 48 hours, we had a new graphic designer working on the brand. So, you just have to kind of know where to look, and also just know that it's not always a home run. Sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's going to be the step that you needed to take to go then find the different resource. So an example of this in the digital marketing space to get started, I didn't even really know where to start. And I started out by hiring in-house, and I had somebody that was, young, very ambitious, knew a ton about the digital space. But he didn't last in the position very long, because people are job hopping, especially out in the marketing world right now. And so he left much sooner than I had ever anticipated. But during the time that I did have him on the team, I learned a lot about what our capabilities were. I listened to him a lot about the channels that we were playing in and what was working and what wasn't. And then I realized that, actually, maybe this is a position that we can keep out of house. And if we work with a firm, we'll have a little bit more security, so that we don't have one person setting up all the systems, owning all the systems that then can leave behind sort of this hole of you don't really know how things are going. Whereas now I have a group that has this institutional knowledge and more of a framework for us. And I don't have that, risk factor anymore.
That's an important piece because I don't think a lot of maybe young franchisors or people that are just franchisees that maybe they have a marketing department as a franchisee or the marketing department as a franchisor. If you are hiring in-house to do things for whatever reason it's in-house, and they leave, what kind of impact is that going to have on your business, especially if they leave, quickly? And do you have stuff documented? Can someone else just swoop in and do that? And I know from my experience in just having people that have worked for me personally on my personal brand, I've done that and it's been fine for me, but there's been relationship there where they just didn't all of a sudden leave. But there's a lot of knowledge that they have in their head and strategy and implementation, and they're gone. And it's not only just impacting me, but it's impacting all my franchisees. That has to be taken into consideration. There has to be redundancies that are built in, or you're scrambling. And if you're scrambling, you're going to have, there's a price to pay for that. So I think that's some really good advice for franchisees and franchisors. If you're wondering, hire an agency, hire a person, hire a freelancer, or whatever it is, that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily give enough thought to. So franchisor relationship with the marketing department. What have you seen some of the best ways that the marketing department or you as the CMO have worked with franchisees?
Well, like I said, I didn't see a job description when I first was given the job offer to come to Sola. And so when I asked for a job description, there was an email forwarded to me. They didn't even take the word draft out of the attachment, but it was a draft from the Sola Marketing Committee with requests of what they would like a marketing director to be hired to do. So I actually got the raw notes, and I saw exactly what the franchisees were looking for.
I
And
probably helped with that. So if there were some high asks in there, some tall orders, that was probably me. So
yeah. Yeah. So, well, when I started at Sola, the existing marketing committee that was made up of 3 of our franchisees, they were almost like my more than just a marketing committee. I mean, they really informed me of the brand. Haynes Chidsey, who's the
great
biggest
guy.
Sola
Yep.
franchisee, is a great guy. I remember when I first started, he sent me a package that was full of all sorts of fun Sola swag, but also all the marketing materials that he had distributed over the years. He had his startup manual that he gives to the stylists, in a binder format. I mean, he gave me everything. And so he said, if you need any more context, give me a call. He was always available. And I really listened to them a lot in the beginning of, okay, what do we need? We need a new website and we need it now. We need to rethink our brand. We need to get some brighter photography, and we need to really get to know the beauty industry. And, I did a lot of assessment of the marketing, and I would come back to them and go, okay, am I on the right track here? Throughout the years, the marketing committee has really evolved because it got to the point where they were basically saying, we're not really here to give you all the ideas anymore. Now we're really just here as a sounding board. And so the evolution sort of, you know, it was very, I would say, affirmative of the direction that we had gone. It felt good to feel like, okay, now we've listened and we've heard. Now we're in a different chapter of the organization, like we talked about, and so we've actually recently reformed our marketing committee, did a relaunch of that with a new set of bylaws and a new charter, and it's just, I think, open dialogue. What I'm hearing is more transparency. Our budget has certainly grown since I joined. That was one of the reasons I almost didn't take the job with Sola, because
There's
the
no
marketing budget was smaller than the budget that I used for a 2-hour party for Cartoon Network for children. So I said I actually just spent this much last month in like a 2-hour party. So anyway, I had to get
But that
super
was a real challenge too. I mean,
Mhm.
we're laughing about it, but that was a real challenge because I think at that time, just to give a little bit of context, so when you came in the marketing budget, I think it was 0.5%. I think franchisees were paying 0.5%. And I remember voting on it the first, Sola convention that I was able to attend. The marketing committee got up and, like you said, there was like 3 people on it. And they're like, hey, what do we want our marketing, royalties to be this next year? And who wants to keep it at 0.5%? And like everybody, the hand went up. And that's how it was. Most franchisors aren't going to give the franchisees any type of a vote on a marketing budget, but that was how it was from the beginning. And so going from 5 to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4%, I'm sure was a massive challenge, even though it was incredibly important. That's what they're used to. So, just that fact is, you had a challenge ahead of you to build that budget to be able to do the things that you ultimately ended up doing.
Oh yeah, and just to be as creative as we possibly could. I mean, I look back at the budget that I put together for the 2014 calendar year, and I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I have memories of my little sister and I in my basement, like drawing posters and blowing up balloons to go throw a Sola party by ourselves. We ordered like 25-cent plastic champagne glasses and, wrote hashtag Sola 5000 all over them to try to launch a campaign. And that's how it was done then. And, we really made a lot of magic happen with very little dollars, which is awesome. But like I said, we didn't have the funds that we needed to even launch any sort of an effective digital marketing strategy. I mean, we didn't have the money that we could possibly pull off some of the programs that we did. So like you said, we did include the marketing committee. There have been a couple of times that we've raised our fee throughout the years. And the first time we did, we brought the whole marketing committee in and we did a presentation with them of, wouldn't it be so cool if we did these events, and the events turned into what we now call the Sola sessions. Wouldn't it be so cool if we built an app? The app is now called Sola Pro. Wouldn't it be cool if we had an ambassador program? And, that program is now called Faces of Sola. And they all said, yeah, we want all that. And then we said, okay, great. We're going to need a little more money to pull any of this off. So that's how it was in those days. Like you said, I think a lot of franchisors are looking at, like you said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. We're not even quite at 2%. But now we have enough of a budget where I remember Stratton promised me, he said, I'm not going to say what the budget was, but he told me what it was. And then he said, but I promise it's going to grow. And I was like, okay, is it going to grow like really, really, really fast? He was like, I can't promise you that. So, a lot of things were handcrafted back then, and we didn't have powerful technology platforms like HubSpot or like Sprout Social, these tools that really make you smarter, and some of our marketing really was throwing darts in the dark. And that's just because we didn't have the funds to back the kind of technology that you need to really to know your cost per lead and your cost per acquisition and the time from lead to close and all of that. It was just a different time. And I remember when I started building my team, and I brought somebody on the team who had said to me, well, I can't do this without this, and this platform. And I was like, well, this might not be the place for you then.
Exactly.
Because we don't have those platforms yet. But what's really cool now, seeing where we are as a brand, as Radiance Holdings, is now with having multiple brands under our umbrella, we really can get a lot more efficient across the technologies that we use and the resources that we bring into the team.
So you went from, no budget, 0.5%, to growing as a franchisor, from the time that you came on to like when I was bought out, the franchisor had grown a lot by itself. And then when I left, I got bought out by the same private equity group that bought Sola Corporate. And then you've gone on to, there's another acquisition. So between that's kind of the how the brands evolved. So Matt and Stratton, they're no longer with the brand. They got bought out, and now you're part of a much larger brand, bigger budget. Talk about the compare and contrast then versus now, and like what it's like to be able to have that private equity money behind you and the resources that you have, because at Mighty Dog Roofing, we don't have that right now. So give me some things to look forward to.
Yeah, well, I will start by saying that both are awesome. The early days were fun, right? Blowing up the balloons and throwing the parties and doing all the things that we did to build the brand, and things moved. And it was, I wouldn't say that it was faster, because it certainly wasn't, but sometimes you were just out flying solo, just trying to get some stuff done, because that's how it had to be. It was very much startup mentality. We kind of joked that we were a 10-year-old startup, but we still had that startup mentality. Now on the other side, I think we have been able to build the team. We've been able to identify certain gaps or holes that we hadn't been able to fill, make different kinds of investments into the business that way. And now we're looking at what kinds of platforms are we using, and do we can we find efficiency by leveraging both the platform across both brands, or web developers that can help integrate the systems, between, for instance, with Beauty Hive, our e-commerce website. Can we shop through our Sola Pro app? Being able to work with people that are bringing the tools together, I think has been incredibly powerful. It's, my team is much bigger. And when I say much bigger, it's like, 6 people compared to 1. We're still not a marketing team of 30 by any means. And we still are looking for efficiency all the time. Everyone's still working just as hard, but we're also doing a lot more than we were back then. When I look at the budget that I put together in 2014, we had social media, we had some content creation, we had some paid media within the beauty industry, but we couldn't really extend beyond those channels. Now we have this incredible integrated marketing strategy that's touching on so many different channels. We have really powerful technology.
Talk about that. I would love to hear, talk about that.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand what good marketing looks like, and so go ahead.
Yeah, well, good marketing is all about your customers. So you have to be where your customers are, and whether it's online, finding them, on websites with banner ads, or in search, or on social media where they're, scrolling their feed, to the offline experience, where do they spend their time? Who are they talking to? How can we reach them? It's really important to get into the head of your customer. We're actually about to do some pretty cool market research and survey work that we haven't done in a while, to really do that work again. It's important to keep stay connected with your customer and really understand how they're spending their time and where, because the tools and technology is always going to be changing. Yep. Like when I started at Sola, it was all about Facebook. Then a year later, every hairdresser under the sun was on Instagram, and that's where they were building their business. Yeah, totally. Still an incredibly powerful tool, and the most powerful ad platform next to Google. They're probably side by side, but now, it changes throughout the years. Throughout the time I've been at Sola, there have been so many social media platforms that have launched, Vero, Periscope, now Clubhouse, and you kind of have to sit back, Snapchat, and wonder, is that where my customer is? Are they spending enough time there? And is this what they want?
And how are they consuming content there? They might have a lot of eyeballs or whatever, but how are they consuming it? Are they going to consume it the type of content in the way that serves you as putting it in front of them there? So
right,
for sure.
Exactly. And it's all about, storytelling. I think, at least in the Sola brand, it's all about the story.
Jennie, I think all brands, story is so huge. You got Story Brand is a good book. Anybody that doesn't know about Story Brand is a good book. But I think, as you say that, everyone should be thinking about that, down to the franchisee that is the local owner of the local handyman franchise should have a story, know their own story, and be able to share it. So then just roll all the way up to the brand. The brand needs to have a story. So keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the whole idea of integrated marketing strategy, it's not different than an omni-channel approach. You're looking at all the different channels and places and platforms that you can be telling your story. And with an integrated strategy, all those platforms help to reinforce the other one and make the other one stronger. So a good example of that would be, our blog. So we first started the Sola blog because for search engine optimization purposes, you want a lot of words on your website. You want to be found for a lot of different reasons. So we started blogging across a lot of different topics. And really, that's sort of the outcome. The real reason of the blog was, let's provide valuable content to our community. So we start blogging. And the next thing I know, first of all, you can use your blog, back to the integrated strategy. You post it on social, you put it in your newsletter. We have franchisees that print the blog out and hang it in, the break room for all of our hairdressers, so that they're, able to find valuable content and learn when they're, in the break room. We share our blog with all of our industry media partners. We get a lot of blog pickups. It really helps from a search engine optimization standpoint. I remember once I was going to do some research on like wedding hair, to come up with some sort of education for our stylists on wedding hair. And I did a Google search for wedding hair, and Sola was the first hit. So that's when I really realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. We're showing up for things like wedding hair that, maybe it's not actually our specialty and what we do. But, now we have all this content. We also position blog content around search terms that we want to show up for. So for instance, salon studios, Eric, where you were running your market, Orange County, everyone knows what a salon studio is, but there are certain markets where it's new and people don't really know what it is. And so we did the search, what is a salon studio? And nothing came up. So we started blogging, what's a salon studio anyway? Now we're showing up, and that's one of our highest traffic blogs. So trying to think about, what kind of search terms do you want to show up for, and position your blog content around that. And that's just really that's just me detailing out one of those channels of utilizing something like a blog.
But I think people can listen to that or the beginning of that, like, you need to have a blog, and you should have a good blog. But what does that really mean? And you just went into what that really means. And for franchisees, if you're thinking about just having a blog yourself, it goes deeper than just having some words and putting it out there with some cool graphics that look really good. There's SEO, there's search terms and there's the content that grabs you with headlines and all of this kind of stuff that most people that don't understand what really goes into it just think it's just a blog. And if a franchisor is doing that really well, meaning researching the keywords, knowing what SEO optimization is, knowing the search terms, and getting creative like that to see where there is a hole in the industry and whatever that is, and then being able to quietly just be blogging about that and putting that content out there, and then doing back channel links and all kinds of stuff to be able to start to rank for that. That's long-term value. But that's the stuff that matters. And if your franchisor is thinking like that, talking like that, then your franchisor is part of a good they have a good marketing team, a good marketing strategy. So I think that's, like, Jennie, that is the difference between like a good CMO and all the rest. Because I know too many people that franchises that have a marketing department that doesn't think like that doesn't talk like that doesn't incorporate branding and story into social, into all of that. And like you said, it's that integrated marketing, like omni-channel marketing, and then having the good tools to be able to put it all together. So I love it. I love it. Anything else? Like, what else would you want to tell an emerging franchisor out there that is wanting to get started as a franchise, and they don't understand like what good marketing early on looks like? What advice would you have for that emerging franchisor?
Well, first of all, thank you for what you just said. That means a lot. I think just to tie a bow on that conversation, think about integrated marketing or these channels as, what would happen if one of the channels disappeared? So, if you're putting all your entire marketing budget into Google, and all of a sudden you don't own Google. What if Google goes away tomorrow? What if Instagram shuts down? and all of a sudden we can't post on Instagram. So thinking about that, and I really appreciate that, Erik. In terms of getting started, I think that anything around product development is marketing. So you're not just going to develop a product that nobody needs. And that same thing goes with telling the story about the product. You really should be thinking about what problems am I solving and who am I solving this problem for? So that'll identify what makes this product different or special or necessary, and the target audience. Who are you solving the problems for? So, I really think about that in terms of some of the marketing programs that we've created. Once you know that really does become your story. I personally, with our kind of brand, and I know it's probably different in a lot of different franchises, but thinking about what your focus is. So when I first started at Sola, focus was really on the studio, because the studio concept was very new. It was very different. We were talking about having floor to ceiling walls to give the stylists their own privacy and play your own music, and soft closing fixtures, because that was a really big deal, and why our studios were the best. But when I started at Sola, I was just totally drawn to the stylists and their stories, and to hear it from a real lifestyle piece. So think about who's going to be the heart of your story. Is it the product itself, or is it the people that the product appeals to? And for our brand, by putting the stylists in the spotlight, it's such a better, authentic story than I could have ever created on my own. It's their words, it's their story, it's their experiences. So I really like to highlight people and stories.
Jennie, it's been fun having you on. How we got reconnected, because we went years without talking. We'd see each other on social and comment every now and then, but been years since we had really spoken or communicated. And the reason we got connected is because franchisees of Sola were raving about you, and they were saying, you should see what Jennie's doing over at Sola, and how much she's done. And then we got reconnected, and I was just like blown away. And so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because I have a ton of respect for you. It's been fun watching you grow, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you giving to the Franchise Secrets audience here. So I appreciate you, and tell the crew hello over at Sola.
Wow. Thank you so much, Erik. That means so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.